The crew.
It is work. Cool.
See how smooth that was? I'm telling you, Zoom events, it's the best. It's the way to go.
Got the full background on and everything. This is nice.
It's official. I'm telling you. Jenna, she did a great job. I think we have to do this in person next year. So we unfortunately won't have this background, but it's a great way to start. But okay, this is day 2. We've got some people trickling in. So welcome. Thank you for those who tuned in yesterday. This is the continuation. We're going to talk about how to grow your retail presence, when to grow, what to look for, all the good stuff. We've got 3 powerhouse founders. We have Denise from Partake, personally, actually a customer of all 3 of you guys, no big deal. But I love the cookies. I just had the confetti ones last night. Sandro from Sanzo, and we have Allie from Poppi. Do you go by Allie or Allison?
Definitely Allison, but it's okay. Friends and
Okay, we have Allison from Poppi. I have this thing where I just shorten people's names for no reason without asking. So that's my fault, but we're all going to learn about each other today. But no, I'm super excited for this. I think one thing that I'm excited to learn about is kind of the ins and outs of product on shelf, kind of using it as a billboard so people can come in and find you organically, when to expand, not to expand too quickly. And I feel like you guys are all kind of in that stage of really taking it to the next level, nationwide distribution and things like that. So I'm pumped for everybody to kind of listen in and learn. But Denise, if you want to kick us off, just kind of tell everyone a little bit about yourself, give a quick background on the brand, where you guys are at today, and we can go around the table.
Sure. I'm excited to be here. I'm Denise. I am the founder and CEO of Partake Foods. I live in New York, but I'm actually moving to LA next month, which I'm super excited about. Spent my career at Coca-Cola, mostly in their venturing and emerging brands group. Loved my experience there, had no intention of leaving. And then my daughter came along and she has a lot of food allergies. And I was really frustrated with the options that I could find for her or lack thereof. So I started Partake in August of 2017, and we were a bootstrapped self-distributed brand. So I sold cookies out of my car and emptied my 401k and sold my engagement ring to fund the business. Now you can find Partake in over 10,000 stores, Kroger, Walmart, Target, Whole Foods, and we have raised outside capital at this point, about $20 million across a slew of women and BIPOC focused funds. So excited to be here and share our journey of exploring retail.
Thank you. Sandra, if you want to go next.
Yeah. By the way, Denise, at some point I need to ask you whether you ended up buying back the engagement ring. I always
now I have my husband in a band, but no engagement ring.
I've listened to your pitch so many times. I've always wanted to ask you that live, if you ever got your engagement ring back.
One day, Sandra.
Very cool. Well, thanks, Dylan, for creating an awesome forum here. I'm super excited to join 2 unbelievable founders here. I'm Sandro Roco. I'm the founder and CEO of Sanzo. We're the first Asian-inspired sparkling water made with real fruit plus no added sugar. I started the brand in July 2019, so really close to our 4-year anniversary. And I started it in my 500 square foot studio apartment in Long Island City, Queens. So not too far away from where Denise started started Partake Foods. I did not have any previous industry experience. I came into this industry kind of purely as a consumer. And in many ways, when I talk about Sanzo, I think of it as my own kind of personal, as a manifestation of my own personal journey as an Asian American. I'm Filipino American on both sides. And I'd say over just the last several years in particular, I've really grown to appreciate a lot more aspects of my background, and kind of notice as well that hey, there weren't really any products out there that were really celebrating the increase in Asian and Asian American influence on broader American pop culture. Actually, right behind me, we did a partnership with Marvel Studios for the release of Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings. That film grossed about $500 million in sales back in 2021. And one of our area sales managers was very creative in Photoshop and created a cute little case stacker over there. But yeah, it's just been awesome for us over the last several years to get involved in a lot of fantastic tentpole moments for the Asian American community, and really also see, I think perhaps even more importantly, see how well our flavors have been received from even outside the community and in broader mass retail. And so I know we're going to be talking a lot more about the retail side, but it's just been super encouraging. And especially now with May being Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, being part of a brand that I'm sure we can all relate in this crazy world of like food and beverage, that we're all not just still around, but all three of our brands with amazing missions are actually thriving in this kind of environment. So just super excited to be here and talk shop.
Allison.
Awesome. Super excited to be here as well with both of you guys. I'm a huge fan of both of your brands. And I know, Sandro, we've had an opportunity to meet quite a bit over the years. So definitely excited to be here. But my name is Allison, and I'm the founder and chief brand officer here at Poppi. And it really started, or I started the company quite a few years ago because I had a ton of different health issues. My stomach always hurt. My skin was horrible with acne, and I was exhausted all the time. And this is back before people even spoke about gut health or what you put into your body can heal, or the conversation wasn't going. And so I did what you're not supposed to do. And I Googled my symptoms, and I kept seeing how to reset and detox your body by drinking apple cider vinegar. I loved the way it made me feel. After like 2 weeks, it was amazing, but I hated the taste of straight vinegar. I don't know if any of you guys on here have taken a shot before, but I don't recommend it. So went to my kitchen and I wanted to find a way to make it taste good, but I wanted to keep the health properties, right? So Poppi is basically a better for you soda. It has 20 to 25 calories, 4 to 5 grams of sugar, full flavor. And so then we went and we shared it with family. We ended up going on to Shark Tank and getting a deal. And then we actually rebranded and launched Poppi in March of 2020, right when COVID hit. I know all of us have dealt with COVID issues over the last few years, but what was really exciting for me is it gave us an opportunity to learn how to be a digital first brand. So with working through our community, through having to launch on Amazon first and versus retail, now we're in both. But it gave us a unique lens to, like, demos were off the table, in real life was off the table, all of these things. And so I love that all of that's back while keeping our digital first approach. But with that said, we really are here at Poppi to really create the modern soda for the next generation. And we're seeing that we're the #1 soda on Amazon. More people Google us than Red Bull. And, over the last 4-week period, even say in Target, we sold more than Gatorade, Dr. Pepper, Propel, Liquid Death, right? We're seeing the growth. We're seeing this movement within retail and digital that people are wanting a better for you soda. So excited, like I said, to be here and to dig in with you guys.
Let's go. That got me hyped. Congrats to all three of you. I mean, one, you've created great products, but two, just like really amazing brands that people naturally gravitate to. Allie, you touched on something that I kind of wanted to bring up, is that I feel like becoming a digitally native brand was essential during COVID, but retail is kind of lagging in its capabilities as it relates to, Amazon and TikTok advertising, all of these like ways that brands can advertise. It's really hard to connect it to retail. So for folks who are on shelf, is there anything that they can do to stand out from like a packaging standpoint? Because I think you guys also just went through a packaging refresh recently. Would be curious to hear your thoughts.
So we originally, previous to Shark Tank, we were called Mother Beverage. We were in a glass bottle. But with really launching Poppi, we went through a whole brand refresh period of about 8 months where we worked on, like, what is our tone of voice? What are we trying to scream, right? White tends to talk about health, right? You get that healthy halo, that clean look and feel, but then color screams taste, right? And if we're truly going after soda, we have to taste amazing. The #1 reason people drink Poppi is because it tastes good. And oh yeah, by the way, it's good for you. So how do you get that to come across in retail when that person has that 1 second that they're walking by? And it really comes into, we're even really strategic with what flavors. We have 10 flavors. We don't just put our top 3 flavors. If we get 4, facings, we don't just throw our top 4 in there. We look at, what is this going to look like on the shelf? If we have 3 red cans, it's not going to jump out like a rainbow. So a lot of that goes into place and that I think a lot of people don't think about is, yeah, maybe you're putting your fifth in there with your top three, but it creates where you're like, oh, dang, that like jumps out. Like that's really, really important to like think through within the brand and the aesthetics of what you're doing.
Denise, I think I saw you post a photo the other day of like the entire row of Partake products. What's kind of the benefit to launching multiple products so you can get that longer shelf space? Is it simply just to pop, or are there other things that go into it?
So we initially launched with 3 SKUs of crunchy cookies, and through hundreds of demos and a lot of survey work with our consumers and looking at syndicated data, we started to see where there were some gaps in our offering and maybe where there were other flavors. Like I feel like on the cookie front, like, chocolate's polarizing, soft versus crunchy is polarizing. And so, I feel like we spend a lot of time towing this line of SKU rationalization because we don't want to be holding too much inventory and we don't want to have too many things, but we also love the billboard effect at retail on shelf. And we also want to make sure we're meeting our consumers' needs. And so we take kind of a quantitative and qualitative approach. So we take outside information like syndicated data. We talk to our consumers through social media. We survey them twice a year via email, alongside kind of sometimes as a founder, and as the team, like taking the gut feel of like, what do we think is the right thing for the brand alongside that data to make decisions is how we thought about, what SKUs to launch. And I think as we've done, as we've performed in retail, we've had the opportunity to extend that brand block. So maybe what was 3 SKUs is now 5 SKUs at a retailer. And so, ideally we're taking a 4-foot block or however many SKUs that may be at some point. But I think it's also a testament to how much work the team has done to be able to prove things out at retail so that we can earn more shelf space.
Sandra, what have you seen? I know I follow everybody here either on LinkedIn or on social. You have some like awesome structures with people building like Sanzo in the stores. You've got the whole wall. Like, can you see a noticeable difference, when you're doing things like that in store relatively to versus just kind of not doing it at the end of the day?
Oh yeah, easily. And I mean, in some ways, Allison and her team are big inspirations for our own retail execution and the look of success that that they've executed. I'll say when we're thinking about SKU development and even our place in the category, it's been an interesting time for us where we started out, for folks who are maybe fans of the brand, you've been predominantly up until this year. Actually, you've only been able to buy Sanzo as a single can in wherever you would purchase your beverages. So a lot of times, we might sit next to a brand like Poppi. And there was for sure for us like a high degree of intentionality going out as a single can. But we've also known that it's crazy. Like I think one of the things I've learned in this space is even slight nuances in what your product like occasion set is and its functionality, or in our case, I'll just say lack thereof, can change your go-to-market. One of the biggest things that we found over the last year was when we would survey customers and ask them how they consumed Sanzo, overwhelmingly, everyone would like the most common refrain we kept hearing was, I share Sanzo with X. I bring Sanzo to this kind of gathering. And it was somewhat of an aha moment, but it was also like an oh duh moment. When you walk down the sparkling water aisles and you see pretty iconic brands like a Spindrift, LaCroix, even some of the soda brands like a San Pellegrino, Perrier has these sparklers as well. The category that we're in is actually over 90% purchased in multi-serve formats, and so we actually we actually just launched these, and this is like the biggest evolution for the brand is that about a month and a half ago, we've since really grown to evolve our brand to be more purchased in a multi-serve format. And so, in those kinds of conversations, we're at 5 flavors that are in the market right now. And to be candid with you, like we're actually being pretty selective about continuing our SKU expansion because we still need to continue to earn the opportunity to build the brand blocks in the sparkling water set. I'll say specifically, we look up to a brand like Spindrift, and even in the top accounts, you're getting, they're getting 5, 6 flavors tops, even LaCroix, same idea. And so when we're looking at our R&D pipeline, we're constantly developing new flavors, but at the same time, we're also having to be a bit realistic about how many new flavors we can like reasonably launch as we go from the single can format to the multi-serve. And fortunately, I think the biggest things that we're seeing in the shift are, hey, our core SKUs that we are converting, the velocities are astronomical, like astronomically higher than even our single serves. So there's still a lot of room for growth and just even building that opportunity up in our existing retail.
I think the cases will crush. They look fantastic.
I have something quick to add to that too, because I don't know who is listening, if it's brands or aspiring people to be in beverage, but I love what you're saying. We're at the same point where we are looking at 4-packs, right? We're going to Costco and Sam, but you want to be careful because when you're a new brand in your first 1, 2, 3 years, people aren't going to immediately buy you as a 12-pack or a 4-pack, right? They want that single trial. So it's a stage gate approach because we're just now year 3 leaning into this because we did test it actually at Publix. We went in with our 4-packs first, no singles. It was so bad they almost kicked us out. We convinced them to switch to singles. We did that for a year, and now we've put our 4-packs back in year 3, and now Publix is our second largest customer, right? And it was an interesting lesson to be learned. And we have that case study now when all retailers are like, "Hey, can you go with your 4-packs first?" We're like, "No, you need that single trial." You either do both, right? You can have it like we do at Target where we have our singles and our 4-packs next to each other. But it's an interesting thing, like as you're building your brand, people want that trial.
Like it.
I think as you think about form factor, as you're building the brand, some of the things that we've seen, we have this like always on seasonal strategy. And so for us, that's given us an additional point in the, like specifically at Target, like we do with them Valentine's Day, Easter, pumpkin, Halloween, and Christmas. And so it gives us an additional space in the back of the store where somebody who may not be shopping the cookie aisle there would find our products, have an opportunity to trial a new fun flavor that they're able to share. And then for us, we've seen some evolution in our consumer. We have found previously that about half of our consumers didn't have food allergies and more than half didn't have children, but we launched a lunchbox style, like a multi-pack at Target as well. 3 years after we launched, and immediately launching that product, the velocity was at like what it took 3 years for other core cookie products to become. But we found that like our demographic very quickly started to shift to be predominantly parents. So it's interesting, like depending on what part of the store, what form factor you have, like what type of consumers will gravitate towards those different products.
Yeah, it's so interesting that it's just like how you even package it can affect how often it sells and how quickly it sells. Allison, you touched on something about people coming to you, retailers being like, okay, we want the 4-packs, but you're like, slow your roll, let's start with the singles and go from there. Can you talk about how, because I feel like retailers will come and say, okay, we'll take you nationwide, let's do it. And the brand may not be ready for that, Kroger nationwide, that Walmart nationwide rollout. What are some of, I guess, kind of the dangers of expanding too quickly? And then 2, what does it look like from a brand's perspective, telling that retailer like, hey, slow down, like, let's just start regionally, let's win, and then let's expand.
Yeah, I think that you made like honestly a lot of good points with even asking that question. But I think, for example, taking Walmart, right? They did reach out to us and say, we want to go full chain wide like tomorrow. We were like maybe 6 months into Target. We were like, okay, we were doing really well. Target's our best customer. And we said no. And they came back and they were like, okay, will you do a 900 store test? And we were like, no. Will you do a 500? And we said yes, because it was specific to certain markets that we had teammates in, right? Like our sales team. So like our ASMs or our RSMs, we have, I think like 30 to 50, depending on where at in the market across the United States to cover our entire nationwide footprint, right? Poppi has gone from, 0 stores to 30,000 stores in 3 years. It's a lot of growth, but there's a lot of no's we've said along the way. And you do want to be very careful, because once you get in that store, you have one shot. So if you fail and you don't, it's just really hard to recover. So you want to have the right, promo schedules in place. You want to have probably 360 programs set for your top 10 retailers, right? You want to make sure you have like in-store support. For us, we're very lucky. We just switched over to full DSD distribution this year. So we have a lot more touch on the shelf. But if you're going in the back end with the Unifies, the Keis, you're getting on the back of a truck once a week. And if they forget to order you, then you are out of stock for 2 weeks and you sit there and there's nothing you did as a brand. You're just not on the shelf for your customer to buy it. So that in itself takes a team to manage that, right? So it starts to really spiral the more that you have, the more accounts that you have. And there's just something about, staying in your lane and then slowly expanding. Don't say yes just to say yes, because it's exciting, because it's going to cost a lot of money down the road if you fail and then you can't get back in if you're not prepared.
Hey, Allison, just curious, in your earliest days, and I know a lot of you, and congrats on all the on the full switch to DSD and being able to support that. That's unbelievable. In your earliest days, was it still, hey, we're going into these regions and it's still going to be like just our team? Did you leverage third-party merchandisers at all? Like, how was your strategy on that?
Yeah. I'm sure you guys have all heard of like Dirty Hands and all of those. 100%. The great thing that when you do work with some of them, I think there's like a few of them out there, they won't work with your competitor at that time. So they really are going in and they're like making sure you have the shelf space. And for anybody that doesn't know, they're just like in-store merchandisers, right? They're going in, making sure your tags are right, making sure your shelf, making sure you're in your planogram spot, right? That's a battle in itself, where you're in your planogram and you go there and you're like, wait, I'm supposed to be here and I'm not here, right? All of these things. So it is a little bit more expensive to do that, but it's really important towards the beginning because you don't have the manpower internally. So yeah, we did that quite a bit. We don't do it as much anymore, but we definitely pulse it during, like, if we're launching in a new retailer, to make sure it's like a successful launch right out the gate.
So you've said no to the nationwide rollout. This one's going to be for everybody. You've started regionally. What do you look for as a brand or as a founder to being like, okay, this is going well, we can replicate this and further and expand doors further? Are there any like metrics, or just overall, you're like, okay, I think the team's ready? What kind of goes into that decision to go from 500 doors to 5,000 doors?
For us, when we initially launched, we were just local in the New York market, like self-distributed. And then we went into Whole Foods Southwest region and we went into Wegmans. Those were the accounts I was chasing the most, because demos and like in real life was the biggest part of our marketing strategy, because it was just me and I had my brother-in-law who would work for cheap/free in Dallas. So like Whole Foods Southwest was a good idea because he'd canvass the state of Texas. Wegmans was kind of in my backyard. Both of them had free data portals though, which was the most important thing, because I couldn't afford syndicated data, but I knew I could like maniacally track every single week how we were performing against competition. So that the velocity was what I used to determine. I asked the buyer, like, what do you want to see? At Wegmans, you could see how competitors were performing, so I could stack up against some of the stalwart brands again in the allergy-friendly cookie space. And when we had a velocity I felt comfortable with is when we started to really expand. But then I kind of went off course slightly, because I thought we would get, like, I thought the natural progression for us would be like grow in some regional grocers, expand with Whole Foods. But we met the head of supplier diversity in the bathroom line at Expo West from Target, the head of supplier diversity from Target in 2017, and we built that relationship. And what I thought would be an offering to do a small test was a nationwide rollout when we were only in Wegmans and Whole Foods Southwest prior. And that was kind of one of those like bet the company moments. And like logic would have probably said that I should have said no. And I went on my gut. I went on the 2.5-year relationship we had built with their team to believe that they would be there to help support and nurture our brand. And thankfully it worked out really well. And so I don't necessarily like know that. I think everybody's story is so different. So like logically, I probably wouldn't have done that. It ended up working out fine for us. I was using velocity in key regional retailers as the barometer for if we should expand. But then I kind of went off course and went into Target nationally, and it worked out okay. And I think Allison made a fantastic point earlier about knowing when to say no. I think I've made some missteps there, not thinking about the bandwidth of the team and or the marketing support it would take to support a super conventional retailer like a Walmart. So I think knowing when to say no is, to her point, super important.
Yeah, I'll just add one little bit from the executional point. I think, again, I'm not sure folks here are already entrepreneurs or looking to get into it or on their own journey. We're about a month and a half into our first foray into conventional grocery. And I now start telling folks, like, I thought Whole Foods was its own beast. And in many ways, there's still things that we're working through there. And I guess from my perspective, I think we've all done this too, like been in the stock rooms at 4 or 5 a.m. packing out, and the difference in the brands that I'm now seeing when we're going out to Vons and Safeway, and it's like, okay, the only beverage brands you really carry backstock of are Coca-Cola, Diet Coke, Pepsi, Sprite, and then like Anheuser-Busch products. So it's like the fight and even getting a reset done successfully has been, a thing that we're learning. And so I think my main thing has just been when, depending on your resources, and I think we've all, literally the name of the conference here is Velocity. So I'm assuming that's already been talked about a lot, but I think just the additional point that I'll add is, even as you're adding on new distribution, I think one of the key lessons we've learned, just like, and we're learning like literally right now as we're rolling out, we basically rolled out a new 1,000 doors or so in the past 6 to 8 weeks. Things can take time. It's important to focus on, once you get the distribution, actually focusing there before you go off to your next, your next account that you're trying to pitch, or your next region that you're trying to pitch. It's just super important to stay focused on building building wins where you currently are, and not just hopping to the next thing. I think it's a very common trap that a lot of us face. Also, because category reviews, the way that they're structured, you have to be planning several months in advance. It's a very tough balance to figure that out. But most importantly, it's even with the amount of distractions that can be out there, like also knowing to when to focus in on the thing, on the task at hand, and just stay on course.
You guys all touched on something in the beginning that I was like, let's get through the questions, and then I'll ask this one at the end prior to the general questions in 2 minutes. So Allison, I was going to call you Allie again. So Allison, you made Poppi for kind of yourself, right? You were going through these issues and you wanted to discover how to build a product, something that would help with that. And Denise, I think it started with your daughter, right? And being allergen friendly, and Sandro telling stories that weren't traditionally or normally told, maybe here in the US. How can you guys communicate that mission? Because I think consumers really want to support brands with missions and things that they resonate with. How can you communicate that mission to your consumer effectively? And then two, is there a way to be a mission forward brand in retail and communicate that, there as well?
I think for us, we have found a little bit of a hack, and that is a little place called TikTok. So with it, what I love the most about TikTok, separate from just like all the success we've had on there, is I love that it gave a place where founders can get on and authentically connect with their consumer, right? So whatever your mission is, or whatever like you're trying to get across, it really has given a platform to be able to tell your story. And just for us, I think my most viral video, it has like 80 million views or something like that. It's just me literally sitting down and telling the story of why I started Poppi. And it resonates with people, right? I'm a mom of 3 boys. I started a company pregnant. I was on Shark Tank 9 months pregnant. It's just like a very relatable place that you can be honest and open and real, right? And actually talk to your community. And what we've seen, the beauty of how that affects is, over the last 2 years, we have over 1 billion views, right, on our page between paid and organic. But the beauty of it is digital doesn't have a zip code. We are seeing in-store lift. So for example, a lot of brands that start out, they do really well in New York or LA, right? You hear that and then you like kind of work yourself in, or, you might have heard of Boulder, now like Austin. But what's the beauty of digitally marketing through and telling your mission or like your story that way? I think some of our top targets are like Fargo, North Dakota, Cincinnati, Ohio, Houston, Texas, right? It's not your typical, yes, of course we do amazing in New York and LA, but we're seeing the same numbers across the nation. So to me, that's what's really exciting, is it's given an opportunity to get to more people quicker with no production. Literally, I can sit here right now after this and film a TikTok and get it up. And that's, I think, the way of the future of a new way to connect and get your mission out.
If Sandra and Denise have anything, if not, I have a whole list of questions that people have submitted.
Yeah, the only thing I just add there is like, I think to specifically Allison's point, there is frankly only so much you can do purely in retail. And so like it gets back actually into for folks who may be starting brands who think you can tell your mission completely at the front of the package, like you can't. I think the people who say don't judge a book by its cover, it's because everyone judges a book by its cover, and that's why packaging and taste matters. And so it's like if there's a lot, I mean, to me, it's almost like the mission building and storytelling, to exactly Allison's point, really happens for especially emerging brands outside of the four walls. And so that's just the only other corollary I wanted to add to that, because I could not agree more with Allison's take. And obviously their execution is the definition of that.
Well, we are now in the questions from the crowd portion. A few of these I would actually like to know the answer to. So the first one is, do velocities vary a ton from one retailer to another, assuming, both or, at scale, mature kind of relationships? And then how do you decide to allocate capital to improve, one region over another?
So what was the first half of the question?
Let's start with the first half. First half being, assuming two mature retailers,
Yeah.
the velocities vary from one to another. Like a mature Publix being at 5 units per store per week, and a mature Kroger being at 3 units. Like, cool, we're good with 3 at Kroger and we're good with 5 because that's what we expect. Or do you want them all to be at the same?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's crazy with that is like, for us, like at Erewhon or something, yeah, we'll do like 1,000 units per store per week, like plus, or Whole Foods 1,000 units per store per week, like in some of our top ones. And then, yeah, you get into like some of these conventional ones, they're a lot lower, but then you have to understand that that's really good for conventional, right? You almost have to put your hat on in understanding it and not getting stressed. But what's crazy within the data, when you're pulling it, say it's like Spencer Mulo, it does like average a lot of it. And so, for example, with the multi-pack conversation that we were talking about earlier, it will even put that as like a unit, not 4 units, or it skews the data sometimes within what we're doing. And we just know that and understand it on our end, right? So it does, don't let it freak you out, but it can help you, because like you're like, oh wow, in this region in Kroger, I'm doing X, but here I'm only doing, maybe it's 200 versus 40, and you're like, what's going on here? And it might be a people problem, right? Maybe it's like, oh, your sales rep in there isn't going in store like they're supposed to. So you really got to like look at it, or maybe it's lacking support, or we were out of stock for 2 weeks. It really helps you like dig in to that. And sometimes just regionally, it's going to be lower, and then you can focus and shift, or it might not be worth it to focus and shift.
And just one thing I'd add there too is, depending on we've never had an issue with this, where if we want to know the category benchmarks, and especially for folks maybe earlier on and don't have access or can't pay or can't afford syndicated data, like when we've gone into category reviews, especially when it's our first one, and we can talk about like first category review versus the ongoing data reviews, but for the first category review, ask your buyer. You can ask your buyer for those kinds of benchmarks, and they're usually quite collaborative. It's been interesting. The second go around, it's really funny. Once I found I'm curious, Allison and Denise, whether you see this, but like for the second go around, all of a sudden now it's like the expectation, ooh, okay, you're an established brand. You now need to come in with all these insights. But the difference between the first time coming into a store and then being in there and then like pitching for additional incrementality and facings and whatnot, like those interactions can be different. But like for at least your first go around, I have found that our category buyers are very, very collaborative in those kinds of benchmarking conversations.
Denise, I'm gonna direct this one at you, and then for the panel, everybody else can jump in. But are promotional strategies and sampling strategies the same across retailers, or are there some that are, better for Publix versus Target? Like how what's the layout of that for you guys?
Sure thing. So we do think about them on a retailer by retailer basis. So at Publix, we invest heavily in like a couple, we just launched in Publix like a month ago. So we're doing a couple of BOGOs, which are pretty pricey, but we feel like we'll drive trial at Publix. At Target, we work with their Roundel team to do like Target.com, or we work with Criteo, which is kind of like paid advertising on Target.com. At Kroger, they have a whole like slew of like loyal customer mailers and all types of like things that you can invest in. So it definitely does vary retailer by retailer when we really go through kind of the offering from each retailer, and then also think about like what is here to line the retailer's pocket and what's actually going to drive trial and sales for our brand. And so we do that in a collaborative way with our broker partner, with brand friends, to get feedback on what's worked for them and what hasn't. And so we do take a tailored approach retailer by retailer, but we do have like an always on strategy as well. So like there's always investment in PR, there's always investment in growing social, there's always investment in like more general digital tools like Instacart. But then we take it a level deeper on a retailer by retailer basis to think about how we're going to allocate the full marketing budget.
Sandro, Allison, anything on the differences?
Yeah, I mean, I think she like nailed it, right? Same strategy with Publix, right? You're not going to stand there and do a demo and like have people try a product, right? A BOGO is going to really, we see a lot of success with that. We do it and our baseline goes up and we sustain it. But then I would say we did a bunch of those, and now we're at the point where we're like, maybe we don't have to do that anymore, right? So it's always evolving as well. It's like what works, when you're first starting out, year 1, 2, 3 is going to be a lot different than 3, 4, 5, right? So, or even from year to year or Q1 to Q4. So I think it sounds like a lot of work, but it's not. It's like the exciting type of conversations that you're having with the retailers and trying to get the off shelves and the, all of these things. The more placement you have in the store, your higher velocities are going to be. The more you have a pallet drop with, a big piece of POS for us. And as people walk in, of course, velocities are going to be higher, right? The more you can get that off shelf really drives for us in particular. So I think just being strategic, but I think I definitely think you nailed it.
Sandro, I've got one for you and then the whole panel as well. But very curious to learn, like, as you grow into these retail doors, right? It's a pretty big cash outlay, right? You have refills, you have distribution fees, you've got broker fees, you got all these things to go out the door. How do you manage kind of the cash side of the business when you're in that growth stage of going from, like I said earlier, the 500 to 5,000 doors? Are you working with banks? What's that process to make sure that like cash flow and offsetting launches and all that stuff is going well?
I mean, that's a pretty hard one. It's honestly, I think the cash side, I'll demystify this for anyone who's trying to enter into the beverage industry. You're very likely going to need to raise capital, and a lot of it, as you do hopefully well, right? And it's almost like, I don't necessarily want to say like we celebrate fundraisers for that alone, but what they do is they do allow you to continue expanding the brand off of what is hopefully a very solid foundation. And so for us, I guess when I think about that foundation, it's like, obviously we've talked a lot about like capital B brand, but as you're getting into the business, really the main metric that I think, that we're managing to is what are our net effective gross margins? And then after that, it ends up being taking a strategic approach to, growth via, sales and marketing and payroll. Because ultimately that is, from my experience, that's been the game. I mean, you can manage cash flow to the extent that you can. But when you're working with distributors, they have their net payment terms. When you're working with manufacturers, unless you have a strategic relationship on either side with with one of the with one of the big conglomerates or one of the massive bottlers. I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is, like, even as we grow, we are still barely a tiny speck in this world. And so I don't know how else to demystify it, but to say, like, I think particularly in beverage, if you're growing, it is almost, it's an honor to be able to raise capital, to raise dilutive, but raise capital nonetheless and continue the journey. I don't know if anyone else has any other takes, but that's been my experience.
Yeah, Denise, is it any different for you guys from being kind of more in the food side of things?
My perception is that it's slightly less expensive in like the shelf stable food world. But I think, to Sandro's point, if you're going to scale a brand and quickly, like, it's going to require a significant amount of capital to be able to invest in building the team and in marketing and in trade and to be successful at retail. I think there's definitely so many different ways to grow a business, and like success looks different for every person. But for the pace that we've chosen to grow our business, we have had to raise outside capital. I hope that we're getting to a place where our business will be self-sustaining in the next 12 to 18 months. And outside of the like equity capital, we've also done debt, and it's not cheap, but it allows us to help finance our working capital. So I think there's a lot of providers out there for folks to explore. But I think I didn't have a good appreciation for, or an accurate appreciation of, exactly how expensive this business is. But I've learned as I go.
Yeah, and fundraising now, I feel like, is the environment's just completely different than what it was, even 12, 18 months ago. Sandro, you mentioned asking the buyer for statistics, and Denise running into one of the buyers, I think, in the line in the bathroom. What's kind of the importance, and how do you maintain a strong relationship with the retailer? And what are some of the benefits that you can get from kind of investing in that partnership with them?
I think it depends on the retailer and the stage you're at. So, and I say that in that way because as we've grown, so has our team, and so we now have a growing sales infrastructure that is supporting the brand. And I think in some regional accounts, for example, it's actually really best for me to get out of the way and let folks who know or that retailer well, manage that business. Whereas for some of the banners that we've all kind of thrown out there, at least for us, like the ones that we're in, and the one that I'm pretty actively managing would be Whole Foods, Target, and to a degree Sprouts. But everything else is really done more with our sales team that has that kind of that just has that relationship, and that's really who they almost prefer working with. I think I've even learned sometimes it's, hey, founder, nice to hear your story. Now let us do the work on the promotional strategies. And
I'm curious, like, I don't want to, but like, it's a broker thing too,
yes.
Right? Like, I don't think a lot of people talk about that. So curious,
right.
It's sales or
same thing too,
the brokers, right? Yeah. Okay. For you guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, Allison, are you managing any retailer relationships at this point, or?
No, it's the same thing. They bring me in. I do tell the story and do the relationship building, but it's almost good, to your point. Like, you have your salespeople, because then we as founders can focus on building that relationship. And then when it's like, we want TPRs and 244s and this, like, they don't want to have those conversations honestly with us. They want to deal with the brokers that know them, they know how things work, and that's that, or your salespeople, right? So it's a similar, like, kind of a give and take. But I'm curious, Denise, for you, is that similar? Or?
Exact same thing. I think that was the hardest part of the business for me to let go because I spent a decade of my life doing CPG sales. So that was the one place I felt most comfortable. So I wanted to lean in the most. But I see where, like, I feel like my job as the CEO is to be like a snowplow and just like clear things for my team to be able to go execute. And I think I was a hindrance actually. So I go in, I do my dog and pony show, but then I try to get out of the way.
How that's a fun thing to talk about from just entrepreneurship in general. Like in the beginning, you're doing everything as the founder. How difficult was it to kind of take a step back and be like, you know what, I'm better letting this person handle this and me going and continuing to do this. And then from there, that's probably going to change in the next 2 years anyways, right? Like I feel like the role of a CEO and a founder is ever changing. Could you guys talk about, how difficult it was as you hit that growth stage to where you had to, take a step back?
Does feel like I've had like 3 different jobs, and so I feel like at the stage of the business that we're in now, it's a lot of relationship building, sharing the mission and vision of the company to external communication partners, really working to build the culture and the organization and like the longer term strategy. Um, and I remember there was a period of time where I almost felt lazy because I was used to like getting up and like using my hands to like go to a store and like merchandise product or like sitting at my computer building the model. And so I think it takes self-awareness on the part of the founder. It takes a team that feels comfortable saying like, like not calling you out, but calling you out. And so I've seen the role evolve significantly. It's been challenging. I actually ended up starting to work with a leadership coach because I think it's a very steep learning curve to go from like 3 different jobs in like 3 years. Like in no other career is someone expected to do that amongst like the pressure that comes with like investors and like the growth and the team. And so I think having a community of like founders that you can turn to, like having a coach or like some sort of professional support that you can lean on, and then being honest about with yourself about like what you don't like about the business. Because as it grows, I think you do sometimes get the pleasure of being able to choose which parts you lean in more on or lean out of more.
I'll second the coach thing though. I think something that people don't talk about as founders enough is the fact that we hustle, we get things done. We probably move quick. We probably don't do a lot of process at the beginning, right? But as you grow, process is not a bad thing, right? That's a big lesson I've had to learn over time of just like, do titles matter? Like, let's just get it done. I don't care, just I'll do it, right? But as you grow, there's a lot like that can be actually really hurtful to a business. So that's something I'm learning. I'm working with a coach as well. And it's really eye-opening to have that self-awareness where you can come in and, we just did a 360 and they're like, Allison, your vision, you're amazing with this. But sometimes if we're needing to get something done, we don't need to, brainstorm down. Like we just need to get stuff done. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. But that self-awareness now I know to be more productive and what is the intention of this meeting going and how you guys handle it if you don't need me, if it's not necessary, right? But I think as founders at the beginning, you don't know that and you need to learn it. And it's like an ego thing. So I think it's important to talk more about this, honestly.
I feel like I'm in therapy right now. I'm literally going through this like right now on a personal level as well. And I think just the one thing I'll add, because everything here has just been like spot on for me, is I think I'm in a transition phase right now with that. I'm trying to identify potentially like, who might be, next potential like senior leaders that can help offload that, because I think I'm in this mode of like all the strategy stuff. And then there are still certain things at the executional level that I'm like, oh, I guess I'm still the person who signs off on this. Like, gosh, all right. And then like adding all those up, and it's like, wow, that is still a decent portion of the week that I'll be honest, is probably, holding our team back. Or if not our team, then maybe our brand, or is causing us to work maybe like a little more than we maybe want to or should be. So yeah, I'll just say I'm in Prague on all these things that we're talking about.
No, I totally hear you. I figured it doesn't have a ton to deal with retail, but I felt like it was a good it was a good kind of little segue we made there. But we're at time. I told you guys it would go fast, but thank you. I think the 3 of you spoke to a lot of really interesting things and a lot of just good information for founders who are listening in and brand marketers and sales folks, just to kind of take away a ton of notes from this call for them to move forward and move their brand forward. So thank you for taking the time to jump on. The next session starts at 11 for people who are still on. It's the retailer perspective. Perfect segue from this one. We've got Jane from Kroger, Justin from Jimbo's, and Kabir from Erewhon. So I think it's going to be a really interesting chat. But again, thank you to the three of you. You guys did an amazing job. And we'll catch up soon, I'm sure. So
Thank you.
Thank you.